farmer in the UK, and he has a concept called zero grazing. And effectively, he goes out into a wet field with these big balloon tire. I'm opening it up here. I'll give you the link. He goes out into the field with this big balloon tire vehicle, harvests wet grass, and feeds it to his cattle who don't move. And I'm sure there's a lot more technicalities than that, but you get some. So smaller, bigger tires, more able to operate in wet conditions.
So he's floating on top.
Well, I mean, floating. I mean, it's a big vehicle, right? So floating is not necessarily the adverb I would use, but I think
less downforce.
That may not be the exact video that I saw, but it's probably pretty close. Oh yeah, that's the one. So it's a big vehicle. There's those moo cows. Big operation.
Wow.
Imagine an autonomous vehicle doing all that work.
It's a good job for it.
Exactly right. Hello, Jeff.
Hi.
Let me start by just commenting on status, just to get the ball rolling. I'm trying to find my task list because it's a little bit easier for me to do it from there. Milestone plan. Share, desktop, share. So I've been trying to keep track of my individual things. I think you can see that spreadsheet, right?
Yep.
That's bigger. Bigger. I mean, for me, I've been spending time mucking with the super servo and getting it on the vehicle. I've got it on the vehicle. Spent some time controlling, shutting off the vehicle by installing the magneto wire into the engine. Thank you, Matt, for helping me figure that out. So I've got a red button device on top of my machine that grounds it out via the magneto wire. I call it kill switch number 1 because ultimately I'd like to be able to kill it via the GPIO pin on the Raspberry Pi connected to 8-position relay, as well as another kill switch number 3 with a wireless key fob that would sit in my pocket. But at the moment, just done number 1. So now I've been spending time. I want to use the Greenzie 3.2 that I've installed inside of the Super Servo to, directly listen to command velocity commands. I envision that Greenzie 3.2 listening to command velocity commands for, target speed, as well as actual speed, and with those 2 inputs into the Greenzie 3.2 sitting on the super servo for it then to control the servo. So that's my next task, is to make that a smart. Oops, I didn't do very good. Make that a smart super servo. That's where I'm at. What are you working on, Matt?
Well, so
Or questions? Or doubts, dubitas, as they would say in Portuguese, dubitas? Any dubitas? Or, oh my gosh, you're crazy, don't do that.
no. I think it's awesome, trying different approaches. I don't know if there are lessons learned about which is the best way to do that, but we can work through that and get opinions. I've been put out a proposal for ag sensors. So I was looking at some of the sensor messages in ROS, the standard sensor messages. And when I was at the hackathon, there was a study on CO2, and we don't have a standard message for CO2. So I was trying at this other open source, the Gathering of Open Agriculture Technology, kind of made a post about what sensors are useful in agriculture, and then maybe we can start making some standard ag messages and put together a proposal for ROS. And I think that will help us kind of as we build out our software and start to record these datas. If we can get our standard messages down sooner than later, that may be helpful.
Cool. The URL that you just posted, is that the proposal you just made?
Yeah, I just made one, just the CO2 sensor message, but there are obviously other ones: soil moisture, pH, chlorophyll, quantum sensors to measure light levels. I don't exactly know what sensors are the best ones or what would be like the first 10 sensors, but maybe we can just start collecting that, make standard messages, and then put together a proposal. The other piece is as we have these robots out running around, or we're collecting these data sets, then uploading them to the Farm OS. That would be one use case. Is now once we have these standard messages, we can upload to the Farm OS, the farm management software tool. So it's like how do we integrate these robots into the sensors that researchers are already doing, and how do we get ROS ready for them?
I think that's an interesting challenge. Have you seen any group lean into that? I mean, is there any association that's carrying the flag or anything around that?
That would be us.
Just us, okay.
Yeah. But one of the researchers is doing an interesting study measuring CO2 levels at different heights. And so you can imagine like basically a point cloud of CO2 measurements. And one of the things I think is fascinating about ROS is once we make this CO2 message and we have our GPS that long altitude, now we can do point cloud visualization. We can start to use other ROS tools once we bring it into our world. Now, some of these things may be stretches and not useful, maybe only pertain to robotics, but it's amazing how you can get advantages from other fields. And so making those available to these researchers, I think would be kind of fun.
I'm trying to remember the sensor standard in the industrial side of the house. I mean, in the natural gas business. I'm trying to remember what they use for sensor message standards. Anyway, I'll find it and mention it later. But there are, for industrial devices, I mean, standards have become a pretty hot topic and people have adopted them. And I mean, in the IT space, we're actually using vulnerability scanning software to detect what are the vulnerabilities for those devices. So there's a standard message as an example. You can send an industrial sensor that says what firmware version, give me your manufacturer model and firmware version, and it'll reply to that. And then you can do effectively a lookup that says, based on this manufacturer model and firmware version, here are the vulnerabilities associated with that. So sending that effectively, that get info kind of message is a standard. And then there's a lot you can do with that once you get make, model, and firmware version. Anyway, I'll try to find that and send it to you.
So make, model, and firmware. Okay, that would be useful. I mean, especially with all of these little IoT devices, that makes total sense to have a standard way just to get that information back out of the device.
Right.
Would be helpful for us too. Like if you're downloading some version of whatever to your servo, it would be nice to have some way to get that information back out of your servo without having to go directly onto it.
The other thing that your comments triggered was an email that I got this week. Jeff, or you guys may have all gotten the same thing. It seems Ardu Simple has got a new product or a revised product, and they're marketing it with RTK and heading. So no idea. I don't know, Jeff, if you got the same notice or looked at that yet. I thought that was an interesting announcement.
Yeah, I got the same notice, and I posted it somewhere on Slack that it had shown up.
Once again, you're ahead of me by 6 steps. Anything else going on in your roadmap?
Reinforcement learning, taking a class, but that's about it. I don't know how to apply it, but originally I was thinking about auto-tuning PIDs, but after I've been studying this, they said that's a bad use case. There's a lot of easier ways to do it, but that was one of the motivations behind that.
Well, it won't be long before I have to tune the PID on my super servo. Do you want to point me in the direction of what's going to be the best way to incorporate a PID, and whose PID should I use, and then what's the right way to configure that?
Yeah, I don't know. There was some discussion around Lino Robot, their setup instructions. They have software that can run on multiple platforms, and then they have the PID dynamic reconfigure. And they also have an instruction manual on tuning the PIDs. So they use that extensively in their base robot software.
How about something simple like, I thought there was a PID library for, I'm thinking of the Arduino platform, but I'm assuming it would work on a Teensy 3.2 as well. You don't use that PID library, do you? You effectively wrote your own.
Yeah, I tried something. Some of the nice advantages, yes, you can do that. You can just have the include and then the PID. Some of the nice things about doing it the kind of the raw-centric way is being able to adjust those parameters on the fly or through like dynamic reconfigure.
So when you say the raw-centric way, tell me more. What do you mean by the raw-centric way?
Well, if you do an include, how do you adjust those values? Where do you store where do you store the constants, and then how do you adjust it?
Those all sound like sentences with a question mark on the end of them. I'm looking for a period on the end of it.
Yep. It's so okay. So like you
A
can,
verb and an action is what I'm looking for, brother.
yeah.
I can clear that up. There are questions, period.
You guys are killing me. You're killing me. Okay. Well, without any other suggestions, I'm probably going to do the include PID from Arduino and see what I come up with. Someday you'll have to give me a lesson though on the whole graphing. You've got graphing down really well with Ross, and I'm not there yet. So so when you posted something here, what's ppm versus percent sign?
So Matt had shared the link to the Google Drive, and I was reading, and he had a question up there asking if ppm is better than percent CO2. So I found this link, and it also got me wondering, why just have a CO2 sensor message when we can have a gas sensor message? Because most of the times you also want to know nitrogen in your and I think there's 3 NPK for the field, and then you also want to know CO2. So maybe it could just be a gas sensor message, because all of those can be calculated using ppm. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a CO2 message, but it could be a gas message, is what I was thinking about.
Yeah. So okay. That's interesting. So like first thought was like an enum where you could choose whatever sensor or whatever chemical it is. You're making it more flexible without having to create an individual message for each one. That's a great suggestion. I don't know if there is a sensor message like that already in ROS that we can use the same architecture for, but that's a great suggestion because there are multiple gases.
I was thinking more of something like, if you have a CO2 sensor node, you just publish that on a gas sensor message, and you just name it CO2, so you know it's CO2. Because making enums for all the gases on the periodic table or something like that doesn't make sense. So you just leave it to the user. An exercise for the user is what most people say.
Okay, no, that's a great suggestion. Maybe I'll make a post in ROS questions or something and see what people think, or ROS answers. Questions, answers.ros.org.
Anything else going on your world, Matt?
About the same.
Jeff, anything you want to comment on?
Well, since I decided I needed something to put my GPS on, I went home and actually soldered a connector onto my controller board so I can plug my steering servo into it now. So I've got that out of the way. So when I get around to trying that, that'll help out. And the last couple of days, in fact, I think it was yesterday, I went out and put my dual Ublox moving baseline system on my car and put that hemisphere, or they call it their dual antenna GPS compass. So I put that on. I went and drove around, and this one is this particular graph right here is the output of the what would be considered the base of the base rover on there, and I'm feeding in the correction data. So this is an actual RTK output. And it's interesting here, the course over ground, which is the number they calculate. So it's just like if you just set your unit up as a RTK position and you look at the course over ground coming out of it, it looks nice and clean. The only problem is right here, this it's going backwards. So normally the line would be down here, but when you're going backwards, it jumps up there. And also over here, it's going backwards. And there's nothing in the data to tell you that. So you have to keep track of that yourself. And the plot down below is basically that same plot above, and I just put the speed on top of it. So anytime where the speed is 0 down here, you can see, if you look real close, it simply latches whatever the last number was you had. And that's important because when I show you, let's see, do I even have that one? Let me pull that one up. Well, it's not going to show me. Oh, let's try this one. Because if you don't latch it, then it does this. It bounces around whenever the speed is 0. Then it's just garbage coming out. So it's good that Ublox is taking care of that. And they put a threshold, I think, of 1/10 of a meter per second. So at 4 inches per second, if you're above that, you're getting valid data, and otherwise it just latches the number. So with what Matt has right now, it just is Ublox receiver on his tractor. This is what you should be able to get out of it. And so it gives you some fairly decent information, and next plot I'll show you how that lines up. But the only problem is you have to take care of it when you back up, and I guess that's really the real problem with that. So we go on to the next plot here, and this one is, come on, there we go. And this is on the rover side, which would be this has the moving baseline heading coming out. So the blue line is the heading is being generated that way, and it seems nice and stable. And this where it's bouncing up and down, that's because it's going from 0 to 360. It just wraps around, so It just looks bad on a graph. So it's really not that bad. So here it's obvious. So you see, this is where it's backing up. See, the line should be down here, but since I'm going backwards, it jumps up here and doesn't tell you that. And then over here, as I'm backing up, it gives you the same kind of thing. And this shows you that the course over ground coming out of the rover matches the moving baseline very closely. Those are right on top of each other. So again, I'm thinking that the course over ground value that comes out is probably just as good as the moving baseline, except that when you're stopped, you don't get, it's not giving you the heading. So you just have to put some extra logic in there to take care of that. So without spending twice as much money, you should be able to still be able to get a decent heading out of it. Just when you first start up, you have to move some amount before it starts recording that. And then my other plot here, this is the hemisphere compass and my moving baseline signal as a reference. So you can see the reference coming out of the moving baseline is nice and flat here. When I first started up, it's not real. The compass is the orange line, and it's not really on top of it there. And you can see as it moves along, there's places here where it's varying between the two. So this plot down the bottom is simply, I said, take the difference between these two values and plot it out down here. And at times it's off by as much as 5 degrees as you drive around. And so these up here showed up on the plot. Those are off by 5 degrees. And keep in mind that GPS compass is actually, it's a single band L1 only receiver, and it's GPS only, and it's just using the SBAS correction, so it doesn't have any extra correction service into it. So depending what you're trying to get out of it, if it's okay to have it off by 5 degrees at times, it does work and gives you a heading. And when it first starts up, somewhere in here, somewhere over here is where I actually started driving. So up to that point, it took it a while. It actually didn't take it very long, and it locked on and started giving me a heading. But you can see it's not really as accurate as the other heading. As soon as I started to move here, then it corrected itself. So they're basically lined up. So again, the question is, is that the way you want to get your heading, or do you want to stick with a magnetometer, or do you want to try to use the calculated heading coming out of any GPS and just put some extra logic on to use that? So anyway, that's what I've been doing with it. And I was trying to plot, I had some other plots where I was plotting the latitude versus longitude, but it's such a coarse resolution on here, you can't really see anything. They just line up anyway. Let's see, was it on this one? Oh, I think I deleted those. This one was, let's see. This is latitude. Well, one says latitude, one says longitude. I think it was what I actually had was, it was the two receivers that were next to each other. I had the compass and the base of my moving base sitting side by side. So this is the difference between, I guess it is latitude and longitude. So I took the base receiver, which is my reference as far as latitude and longitude, and then the orange is the other one. And I'm sitting there looking at it, I'm not really sure what this plot's trying to tell me. I figured if I go back out and put them on there and let it sit there for half an hour without moving, I should be able to plot the points and see how accurate the you know, this in a static condition, the fact that I'm not putting correction data into the thing, how small a grouping of points do I get? And if I look at this, the one coming off the RTK receiver should be, you know, a nice tight grouping of 1 to 2 centimeters, and coming off the other one is probably, I think somewhere they say it's as good as 1/3 of a meter or something. And so that's another test I can run to see what that does. So that's what I've been doing for that stuff. And I guess one other thing I was going to point out, that CBQ from Greenzie Lawn Mowing, the guy that's been posting a couple times lately. I was looking at his stuff, and I sent him an email and says, "Gee, it doesn't look like your tractor's going very straight." And he goes, "Yeah, that's a good point." And so he wants to organize a meeting with me to go over what he's doing to see if I have any ideas on how to fix it. I'd suggested the lawnmower meeting today, and I thought he might dial in, but apparently he didn't. So I think next Tuesday we got a meeting set up, and he's going to tell me what's on it. And if you go out to his on YouTube under Greenzie, they have one that's it's the Atlanta robotics meeting. There's like a monthly meeting they do, and he had an entire meeting where he was talking about his unit, and he talks about using ROS and talks about some of the sensors. And the one thing I wanted to know was, what is he using to control his transmissions? He keeps calling it an actuator or a servo, and so I have no idea what's on there. And during that entire hour presentation, he didn't mention what that was. He did point out that all the people are software people, so what they did was they hired another company in town to retrofit the thing and put some kind of actuators on the transmission. So all the mechanical stuff was given to somebody else. So I'm curious to find out what they're using there and how they're controlling it. Because if you go watch his plots that he did, let's see how quickly can I pull that up. First of all, let me kill this. And if the thing on Slack that he posted just a couple days ago under, here it is. And might be easiest to do like, oh, I lost my window again. There it is. So that one plot that he made, if you look right here, can I zoom in on this? See, his lines aren't very straight as he's driving back and forth, and I assume that's probably the grid in meters. So it's what, maybe 8 meters or so he's driving back and forth, and it's not going very straight. So that's what brought up the whole thing. I was looking at it thinking, you know, it should go a lot straighter than that. So as I said, he said their whole group is software people, and they push the mechanical stuff off on other people. And he says, well, the control is simply PID on top of PID all the way down to the motors. So I think they started off, they just kept trying to correct for it and probably got way too much software in there to, you know, they see a problem, so they correct for that, and then they have to correct for that, and they have to correct for that. So as I said, I'm going to talk to them on Tuesday, and they're going to explain to me what they're doing and see what my suggestions are on that. And I'm thinking what they need to do is the wheels are driven by like basically a hydrostatic transmission. So it's like on your lawnmowers where you've got the hydrostatic transmission on the back. If you had 2 of those, one on the left and one on the right, so you move the lever, you know, back and forth to control the direction of the right wheel or control the direction of the left wheel. So I think it's the same kind of concept there. It's just a matter of how do you get that to go with the right speed. And I was looking at them, they've got an encoder on the back wheels. They've just got some little arms that drop a wheel on top of their back wheels. So as they drive forward, it keeps track of their odometry. And my thought is, you know, you just set this up like anything else, any other motor control in ROS, where the ROS is sending you down a command velocity message, and then it's up to you to make the wheels go at the correct speed. So I think they need to take, say, their left wheel and say, here's my current speed based on the encoder, and here's the requested speed coming in. Just have a controller at that point that makes that wheel respond like it should, because that's the way I do it on my electrically driven robots, and that that seems to make sense to me to do it that way. So it's just gonna be a matter of, seeing what they have and seeing how they're controlling it and see what options they have. And it could be it's like a linear actuator, it's not moving fast enough, so that's gonna, by the time it turns one way, you've overcorrected, so that's why it's gonna oscillate back and forth. So anyway, that's gonna be coming up. So next week I'll get some more information on that and see what's going on.
Cool. If you want to, if he's open to sharing the invite, I don't know what time it is Tuesday, but might have others interested in joining.
Well, I pointed out that we have this lawn tractor meeting. He says, "Oh, first he said, well, he didn't know if that's for lawn mowers. He thought it was just for lawn tractors." And I said, "Well, we're not real picky." And as he pointed out, well, it's just another implement you can put on. It was actually an implement you guys took off when you take your blade off. So
we're high maintenance, man. So don't we don't deviate much.
And at one point he said, "Well, if you don't want it recorded, we could just do a session without recording." He said, "Oh no, we're open to that. It's just that apparently it didn't meet their scheduling." So again, after I talk to him next week, we'll get some more information and maybe we can get him on this group and go over the whole thing.
Cool. Anything else, Jeff, you want to share?
Not that I can think of right offhand.
Matt, you posted GPS heading from Ublox F9P.
Yeah, it was a suggestion from Jeff. Whenever we're talking about something, put tags about what we're talking about. So we will get a timestamp with that information. So if you want to go back and go to that section, you can see it.
Got it.
I had one more thought on that. We should prepend it with something like info : and then put the thing so people aren't trying to make that into a link or something. Yep. Or or say discussion : or whatever. But that's the only other thing I thought of on that.
Good
Crazy idea :
Check this out. Yeah.
So, anything going on in your world you want to share?
Lots of things going on. Nothing worth sharing, I think. Just tiny bits of information that I've been collecting, and then trying to put it all together. So, oops.
Big brain like yours, you always have something interesting.
Not at the moment though. Learning a lot about C++ and the nitty-gritties. But I've been following a C++ podcast called CPP Cast, and they just hit the 200th episode for that. And they released it I think today. And they brought in a speaker who's talking about C++ 20. So yeah, I'm looking forward to listening to that when I get time later this week. But yeah, I think that's something on my mind.
Cool.
Be interesting. Lots of things that they're adding on C++ 20. They say it's going to be as big as C++ 11. So, or 14. But
just out of curiosity, what are they doing? Are they, what would be an example of a big change, like database support or?
There's a lot of things going on in terms of networking, I believe. I haven't read that. I just heard that there's going to be, it's all I've heard. And that's all the information I've heard from them at the podcast. But I'm going to share a link. And then I read it on, I don't have much information right now, but we'll see if I get to listen to it. And I mean, I would recommend you guys, if you're interested in that, in those changes, it would be interesting to learn.
Cool. Anything else?
No, I think that's it on my end.
And I'm sorry, someone joined with the name that I'm not familiar with.
Hey, it's Kalyan.
Oh, hey, Kalyan.
This is my first time joining the lawn tractor or lawnmower meeting.
I'm glad you joined. I actually had a question for you just as you if I wanted to start videoing my yard, have you guys come up with, say, hey, here's a suggested bill of material or simple approach to capturing video for later use?
That's definitely a good ask. We have to probably put together some type of kit that other people can use. Yeah. What would you like with it? Is it for AI stuff, or is it for just recording your lawn, or what would that be used?
I'll just give you a simple use case. I could imagine once I get my vehicle moving, again, the whole idea is to use this platform as a learning platform for future use. But so then if I said, hey, so where are the dandelions in the yard? Just videoing the yard and being able to find things that might be of interest to, again, exercise the technology and demonstrate the concept. And I remember Matt mentioning earlier, getting stock video is sometimes a challenge, and was thinking, maybe I should be worrying about now videotaping stuff, creating video.
Yeah, that's a very good ask. Yeah, definitely videoing that and storing that to a hard drive would be like the recording the video and playing it back it's a very good task. It's funny you asked that, because at work we have a complete framework which is called ADAS record and playback, which is just for this purpose, where we have cameras and we record that, and people can pull out the data later. And it not only gets camera data, but it also synchronizes all the other sensors and collects the other sensors' data also at the same time, so that you can see how each sensor were responding. But I understand your ask was very simple, like, hey, can we just get the video portion to that one?
We can do that with ROS bags.
Yeah, ROS bags ROS bags are definitely one way to record.
Well, maybe later I'll ask you. I've got a servo that I got to, battle under control at the moment. So that's my priority at the moment.
Yeah, we can look into that in the background. I think this was asked before. Is there a price point for this, or what will be? You guys want just a USB camera, or how many cameras do we want to log data?
Well, I don't know.
Do we want high resolution?
I mean, I'm assuming there is some sort of, like, if it's as simple as a decent camera feeding stuff into a Raspberry Pi, that's one price point. What would the next price point be in your mind? Because wouldn't necessarily have to be the cheapest thing. $3,000 would probably be out of the question. $500 wouldn't be out of the question in my mind.
Okay. So simple, yeah. Probably we can look at some USB cameras and hook them up. And Matt already has a video hooked up to a Nano. We could probably figure out a way to use that same camera and log data.
What do you think of the resolution of the Logitech 920?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure. Have you taken any lawn videos, Matt, with that?
I don't think so, but I can. If that's helpful, then we can compare.
Yeah, we should. I guess we should probably take some images, and then we should. I think we should find out what is the resolution which is needed for these cameras, and then probably what frame rate they need to be going. Especially if you have a camera on a robot, and if it's recording the data, we don't want any motion blur, right? So it should go at certain rate. Yeah, those are some of the. It seems like we want something less than 200 or 300 with good resolution, and have some ability to control how much data we want to log and when to start logging the data and then when to stop logging the data. Does that sound reasonable, Al?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, we could look into that.
Use case, find the dandelions.
Find the dandelion. What would be the size of the dandelions? Very small or?
Not, I mean, 3 inches. I don't know, something. It's certainly not going to be the millimeter scale. It's going to be tens of millimeters.
Okay. I'm pretty sure I have some dandelions in my lawn, so I could probably take some pictures and start from there.
Also, do you want the output of that to be in a video format, or do you want it as separate images, like a series of JPEG images coming out? I guess it depends on how you're going to process it later on as to what you have.
I would say video probably, because usually when you do as a video, you would get some compression out of it. If we start saving an individual files, it might take more space on it. That would be my thought.
And it may be possible later on to say, take a video and make it into individual images if, figure out some kind of a converter to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, there are a ton of software there which can take, or we could probably write in Python too, using OpenCV to take the video and then just get individual images out of that.
Because my simple understanding, I mean, that's actually why I'm just interested in trying to learn, but my simple understanding is you would like take the broad video and then you would have to go find images that represent the kinds of things you're looking for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those you would then store, and then those you would use to train ultimately the model, right? So that's I'm just trying to think through, hey, if I ever wanted to have the raw data to then go find the individual things to train the model, how do I capture that stuff at the very, very, very beginning?
Yeah, so I guess the idea we're saying is that we could store maybe every 5 minutes of video into a file format, and then we would bring that into like a host machine, which would be like our laptop, and inside that we could write a program which would read these videos, and then it can extract out the images from it, and we can use those extracted images to train our models. And as an intermediate step, if we want, whatever images we have extracted, we can store them again in another folder as those intermediate images, so that we don't have to keep extracting the images again. The advantage of storing that into an MPEG file or something is that, if we store 1,000 images and each one of them is 4 megabytes, that would take 4 gigabytes worth of hard drive space. But if we store that in a movie, that might take only 1/8 of that space. And on a robot, we want to capture videos for a long duration, right? So that's why I was preferring more the video format.
Got it. Anything else going on in your world you want to share now that I've drug you down a video path?
No, nothing crazy. Nothing crazy.
Any lawn tractor specific questions you had in your mind, just wondering what we're doing?
I should probably ramp myself up on the lawn tractor stuff. After I went to the AgBot, I was very much focused on the AI side and all this stuff, which we'll still continue doing it. I was like, damn, I want to build a robot too now, like just to get hands dirty on this. Matt had a bad influence on me now. I gotta blame. But
Bad. That sounds like a good influence. Yeah.
no, I was just being sarcastic. I was being very sarcastic about Matt. Yeah, it is great actually. I probably should have caught on to that. I think now that we would have one or two more people in the perception team, so we should be able to execute on it, and I can start devoting some time on the bigger building blocks. So yeah, I'm excited. I'll start trying to come to this meeting also starting next week.
Cool. Happy to have you. Guys, I don't have anything else. Anybody have any last minute comments they want to?
I have one question, Al. Like, so where is your notes? I want to start digging into your notes. I know you take very good notes along the way. Where is your notes located?
Bear with me a second. Let me get my screen going here. I mean, my tortured process is, and I describe it as such.
Accurately.
Yeah, so in the Ross Lawn Tractor, it must be in the Ross Slack, there's files for my, I mean, everything I have in here.
Okay.
And if I have done something that I think is worth publishing, I have put it in the Ross Lawn Tractor. So there's a few things in here that you'll see my name on, and they tend to be steps to try to get to, you know, ultimately autonomously driving a lawn tractor around. So
Very cool.
these are meant to be artifacts that would be usable by other people, and I guess if they're in here, it means, you know, Matt hasn't deleted them because they're trash, and maybe somebody can look at them and say, hey, maybe I'll try to test this out. Beyond that, for me, I have this folder that's in the Slack channel, and you see, you know, rantings around what's going on in my world. So at the moment, I'm trying to slay my transmission under control, and I try to keep track of what I've been doing there. And it's both because I want somebody to be able to ultimately follow my path, but also because my memory's bad, and it helps me remember what the heck, what was I doing last weekend.
Yeah, I'll probably take a look at this. I might start test driving that and see how it all works out.
The other thing I'll just point out, there is a milestone plan in the Ross Lawn Tractor, this Google Sheet, and that was meant to be, you know, a shell. Anybody can follow whatever process they want. This was meant to be a bit of a shell for how do I get from 0 to, you know, fabricating brackets and installing brackets and testing the vehicle. So again, just to help people get their head around how do you start this thing.
Okay.
Step 1 is not go buy a tractor. No, don't do that.
Did you guys do you have a step to do simulation stuff? No.
I mean, as an example here in step 4, it was, you know,
Okay.
This is all, you know, step 11 was buy a lawn tractor. So all of these things were meant to be things you could do either virtually completely, or just buying the motor, just buying an IMU, just buying a GPS. So even if you're limited on space or whatever, there's a number of things that are the components to get to before you actually want to start with, you know, a lawn tractor purchase.
Okay.
And I don't know about that, but I'm, you know, if you want to have a separate conversation just to go through it, I'm happy to carve out time to do that.
Okay. This sounds like a very, very detailed, very comprehensive step. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
Well, and although for me, I don't get lost in it. It's just one step at a time. You know, for me, if I solder one wire or put in one screw every day, I'm happy. But
No, I'm happy that you took all the notes. We need that. We definitely, there'll be a lot of people who could benefit from it.
basically, I interview Matt and then I write down what he says. That's really what I do.
Fantastic.
Sketchy at best.
Maybe at some point of time we'll have a video for each step.
Yeah, that would be useful too. I mean, you can be the guy to test the instructions and make the video, and we'll be.
That could be my contribution. Yes.
Okay, guys. Anything else? Any more?
I did post a link in the chat group there to that Greenzie presentation if you want to get a rundown of what they're doing with their stuff, and it's a full hour of explaining how they used ROS and various what their goal was for putting this together.
Those are the guys in Atlanta?
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else you've seen in the AgBot, Ag Open GPS guys recently?
I haven't been following them because I can't. I go to the Combine forum. I can't find anything, and so no, I haven't really done anything with that.
Okay, guys. Well, have a great rest of your day and a great weekend.
Thanks.
See you, Matt.
So.